When I walk into the marsh, one of the first things that I notice is this vast intertidal grassland of hugely productive vegetation.
Salt marshes are found in protected coastal waters and temperate zones all over the world.
Salt marshes are world famous for being among the most productive ecosystems in the world. Their productivity rivals that of a plant material in tropical rainforest and animal-owned coral reefs. Marshes are very important for humans. They're pollution filters. They also protect our shorelines from erosion. They're really important for fisheries production. And because of those important services, people are not only interested in keeping the marshes around that are here, conserving them, but putting more out there.
I've been studying salt marshes for over 20 years to understand how they work. I want to know what forces keep them healthy and what we can do to maintain them. The abundance of plants in an ecosystem can be controlled from either the bottom up or the top down. Bottom up control means that abundance is limited by the resources available to the plants, such as water availability, sunlight, and nutrients in the soil. Top down control means that it is controlled by the animals that eat the plants, herbivores, and their predators. When I started my work, there were many examples of top-down control in terrestrial systems, but not in marine plant ecosystems.
So everything I read about salt marshes and their ecology before I came out here told me that this was a bottom-up system where the plants that created this habitat were created by the amount of nutrients that were available to them, that was in the soil.
But early in my research, I made an observation that got me to question this conclusion.
When I got into salt marshes, when I started walking through them, my boots were being filled with snails that were falling off the grasses. And I immediately started to look at these snails and their superabundance and ask what they were eating and how they could be affecting the system.
Here's a really nice one right here.
They're called the Marsh periwinkle snail. They're a medium-sized snail. They can get up to about 1 inch long. And if you look closely, it's a very interesting lifestyle that they have. They go up and down the grasses with the tides.
When I came out here, I found, for instance, this plant looks like it's very heavily grazed, and it was covered in all these snails. I picked every one of these snails off of this plant. There's grazing scars all over it.
So what I had read in the literature told me this marsh plant system was controlled from the bottom up. But given my field observation, I wondered if the marsh grass was instead controlled by the snails eating it. In other words, from the top down. Working with students and postdocs in my laboratory, we designed a number of experiments to test this hypothesis. We set up comparison plots in the marsh. To test bottom-up effects, we added nutrients to some of the plots and not others. And to test top-down effects, we set up plots with and without snails.
One of the things we need to do is we need to add nutrients. So our ingredients for this part of the experiment are fertilizer, pantyhose, and then put it in to the centrifuge tubes to be put into the marsh. We're going to weigh it, then we're going to wrap it and stuff it.
So these are the fertilizer stakes that we made in the lab for the nutrient addition treatments.
To manipulate the presence of snails in our plots, we use exclusion cages. There are 1 meter squared roofless corrals made of hardware cloth and tomato stakes as corner anchors that keep the snails out. In this experiment, we place them in the marsh for 6 months.
We'll pull all the snails out of that cage and look at how plants respond to both of those treatments.
So when we pulled the snails off the marsh, we saw a 100% increase in plant growth. It was under strong top-down control. And we saw an interesting interaction with nutrients. Without snails, we got confirmation of the bottom-up theory. You put more nitrogen on there, just like in your backyard, you get more plant growth. It doubled or tripled in size. But if the snails were there, those fertilized plants were yummy, and they effectively wiped out the marsh in those plots.